Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first session of the Coming Out Stories from India. Coming out. What does that even mean? Is coming out opposite to, say, staying in hiding? I come out every day. Even today, this morning, I was speaking to an accountant and I had to come out. I was sharing that my partner, Nicola, and I needed some advice. He kept calling her Nicholas, assuming I was talking about a man. I had to finally stop him, correct him, and say that my partner, Nicola, she's a woman, same gender. And in that, I had to come out. Why do we even need to come out? Straight heterosexual people don't have to come out, do you? I didn't have to when I led a heterosexual life. Then why this? It's simple because we matter. Such stories matter because it is time to change the narrative. I keep asking myself, why are people so scared of us coming out? What is it about us that makes you so fearful of us? Why do I have to feel so anxious about my sexual orientation? Does any one of us here know what our future will be? What happens if your siblings, a friend, a colleague, or your own child decides to come out? Will you reject them because you don't understand? Or will you listen and accept? Nicola and I decided to launch these coming out stories from India to ensure we all work together as a community in changing the narrative, one story at a time. I'm RagaOlga D'silva, or totally out now, as you know me. Today we have Debolina Dey with us, who has had a wonderful and fascinating journey. Debolina teaches in Delhi University. They identify as queer, both the noun and the adjective. Debolina, welcome.
Hi, Raga. So nice
Hi.
to be on your show.
Fantastic to have you. Fantastic. You're our first on the Coming Out Stories from India. So congratulations. And we're so happy that we have you. We have spoken to many, many people, as you can imagine. I came out only at 50, which was last year. So in my journey, the last 1.5 years, I have been meeting a lot of people. A lot of people have, reached out to me and shared their journeys, their stories. But your story fascinated me. To me, a young person like you, to me, represents where we are as a country. Maybe not fully. Maybe there are shades that we can see in you. Maybe you're someone that I wish I had that kind of life. I don't know. That's why I wanted to delve deep and find out who's this Debolina. So let me start very simply with people who are watching us. And thank you, audience, for joining in. We will have more people joining in. So Debolina, I want to start very simply. Tell us about your journey from Siliguri to Delhi.
Wow. Okay. It's a L-shaped. If you look at the map, it's this L-shaped, direction, and it's, I think, around 2,200 kilometers in terms of space. In terms of time, it's around 22 hours in the fastest train. So that journey was not simply about one day moving to a big city and inhabiting it. My journey from Siliguri to Delhi, very simply, at the very simple level, was about getting into a very good college in Delhi University and studying. But otherwise, the journey was more metaphorically coming out of home and into the world, into the bigger world, exploring things on my own, being on my own for the first time. And I've not left Delhi since 2003. I've been in Berlin for a little bit, for a year and a half. But apart from that, I haven't left Delhi. And Delhi is home now. And Delhi really played a big part in my acceptance of me. Like, Delhi was the first time I attended a Pride. Delhi, the anonymity that Delhi afforded. I came from a small town, big joint family, really not really that much space to be an individual. I don't think the idea of individuality existed, even though we had our separate apartments in a big house. But so the journey from there, from a small town, joint family, really, really very protected. I think we were caught between very liberal ideas and being really not so progressive. I saw my grandmother as a widow, inhabiting a separate space, wearing white all her life, eating vegetarian, very, very old school practices. And yet I was an only child of my parents, only girl child in a small city, come to the big city to study. So all of these actually combining together, I didn't know my head from toe in some senses. I thought I knew back then in my 20s or in my late teens. But Delhi was amazing because the anonymity it afforded me, I could be anybody. I could rediscover myself. And it didn't matter if people were going to say something because nobody really knew me in Delhi. So,
Fantastic. No, I hear you. I hear you. I have a question that is related to this
okay.
joint family before we
Yeah.
get into Delhi, because I just want to, for those who are not familiar with what the joint family system in India is, can you share what is a joint family that you keep referring to?
So my grandfather had five sons and three daughters. The three daughters were married away, but the five sons four out of them decided to live together in the same house and not move out. So that's what a joint family is. And then their wives, and then their children, and then their grandchildren. So it's like a thing that becomes bigger and bigger. It's like a rhizome. It's like it keeps laterally growing. Yeah, so that's there are many different models of joint families, like where the kitchen is, there's one kitchen in the house. In the joint family I grew up in, by the time I was born, we had separate kitchens. So but we every puja that happened, every religious festival, we all came together. I mean, I had a really happy childhood. I must say that it was not oppressive at all. I grew up with a lot of cousins. I never felt like I didn't have a sibling. So, I mean, it was fun. But at the same time, the idea of privacy, the idea of individual, the idea of really having the courage to be yourself was tricky, I would say.
So we have this India, which is a large country. Then you have metropolitan cities. That's where you're in Delhi right now. Then you have within that you have towns and you have smaller villages, and you go smaller, smaller. And within that we have families, which are joint families, extended families living together. And within that, those joint families, just so that the audience can understand, there can be multiple Indias, as we can
Yeah,
say.
absolutely.
Multiple thoughts, multiple belief systems, multiple faiths as well sometimes. So we're
Absolutely.
talking about a country which is so diverse with diverse thinking, and that's the country that we all belong to, and
I
that's
have
the
to tell
country.
you though, I mean, now I end up thinking a lot. I remember when I went to Berlin and people asked me, where you from? I was like, should I say Delhi? Should I say Siliguri? Should I say India? Like when people in Delhi ask me, where you from? Now the question irritates me because I've been in here for 18 years. But actually, this is quite a tricky question in the modern world where we're all migrating. And we had I was second generation migration, like from Bangladesh, which in 1948, and migration still seems to be a problem. We were dispossessed. So, really, I mean, at 35, when I'm thinking of identity, all these factors play such an important role in shaping who I am. So,
So,
yeah,
so you said that Delhi, you made a comment about Delhi basically is where you've come out, right? You feel
yeah,
safe because it gives you a sense of
absolutely.
anonymity. So, what is it about a bigger city versus a smaller place that you come from in Siliguri that they're so distinct? Why in one place you feel comfortable, in the other you're not? You're maybe hidden, not hidden. I don't know yet.
I think it's just that everybody knows you. And I don't think I want this coming out story to be one of courage where I was completely immune to what people are going to say. No, that's not the case. Um, for me, it was it is a certain respectability also. I don't think I was a rebel kid at all. I was not one of those. I didn't rebel against my parents. I was actually quite a good kid, according to the joint family I lived in. And honestly, I was like any other child, scared. I was scared ki log kya kahenge. I was scared. Uh, and also, I don't think I accepted myself. By the time I left home, I thought, okay, I'm not and those times the word was lesbian also. It was queer wasn't there. I thought, this is nothing. I have never had sex with a woman, so I'm not lesbian. I'm just attracted to women. So it was also that it was denial, and it would take me 10 more years to actually get rid of that denial. So it's not just the city that made it possible. It was also the age, the time, the space, and having the space to explore who I was.
Your self-discovery process also, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But see, in a heteronormative society, for me, for instance, like I thought normal life, the word
Yeah,
normal I'm going to use, was between a biological man and a biological woman. A man and a woman romanced and they got married, they procreated, they had children, as I did. So to me, that was my worldview. That is what happened to me, and that is what I lived that life until I discovered that that is what wasn't what who I was. So, like you said, took a long time. I had internal homophobia, and I want to talk
right.
to you about what that means to you. Did you feel internalized homophobia in your life? Or was it something you've never thought about? It never happened to you?
No, no, it happened to me. But before that, I have to tell you that I grew up watching a lot of Bollywood, and my parents had an intercaste love marriage. And honestly, as a very young kid, even before all this socialization happened, when I fell in love with a woman and I thought I was attracted to women, and I always thought love was about rebellion, right? It was, I mean, in the 90s, if you see Bollywood, people were eloping, and, people were like, it was a class rebellion, rich boy falling in love with poor girl. So all of that happened. So at that point, the homophobia had not set in. It was only when, I mean, even if the homophobia was there, I didn't know it as homophobia. I thought, oh, it's all rebellion, and it's all cool to fall in love because my parents had had a rebellious marriage. So, but it was only in college, and when I was out in school, right? I was out to all my friends. There was nothing to be out about. They just knew that I was drawn to women, and I was pretty, like, I would wear my heart on my sleeves. But in college, I think I was pretty traumatized also by, I went to an all women's college, and by people's reaction. It was like that all point and whisper, point and whisper. And at that point, when the real life choices started becoming real, um, when it is when I thought, this is too difficult. I don't want to be one of those. And I did not accept myself for the longest time. I did not accept myself for the longest time that this could be real. When you're in school, a lot of it is not real. You can be so many things, and later you can totally go back on it. But as you become 23, 24, 25, these whispers of marriage, let's get married, what are you going to do, life choices, it is only then that in this entire thing became political for me, and I started going in denial. I'm like, I can't do this. This is too difficult. This is, and homophobia actually. And I was to know later that this was so much internal homophobia. I just didn't want to be one of those people. If it was so difficult, if it was so challenging, if I had to fight all the time, I just didn't want it. It
So
was
when you
too
say,
difficult.
Debolina, when you say difficult, challenging, was it difficult, challenging for you because you had not accepted it, or because the person that you were falling in love with or had fallen in love with, it was difficult to get them to reciprocate as well?
I think it was both. I think for the longest time, um, my idea of sexuality did not have any self love in it. It was about feeling love from the other person. For me, I mean, I remember this. I mean, people would say that love is unconditional, but for me, love, the first condition of love was that you had to belong to the opposite gender. Like only a man could love a woman and a woman could love a man. So I had never experienced love as unconditional. So for me, accepting myself was also tied in with the fact that I was never going to be accepted in love, like that love was inaccessible. So I mean, it wasn't like that always, but eventually I think the fact that one of my partners was so much more easier about it made it easier to accept myself, for sure. I'm not gonna, you know.
So in your journey from, say, in your early 20s to mid 20s, when you're in the process of self-discovery, you have internal homophobia, then you discover yourself and you feel comfortable with who you are. Did it change for you then on? Then once you settled within yourself, did that change
Yeah.
for you as a person and as somebody who could then feel free to fall in love with whoever you wanted to?
I don't think we are still not free to fall in love with whoever we want to. There is still, limited options, sure. But yes, as I moved along and as I explored myself, as I explored options, there's a point as you grow older. I think I also grew up with a very keen sense of time. There are some doors that close forever, not just in terms of career, but life choices. And even though I was out to my university, to my friends, I was not very public about it. And one of the reasons I started going public about it was so that I could not be blackmailed into, back into the closet or somehow. So for me, the declaration was also, it's like holding something and saying, oh, okay, steady now, you're there. Um, so I think strangely, the public and the private sort of went together as I started growing older and the life choices became more real for me. I went through a phase when I wanted to get married, and my parents were like, I thought I wanted to get married. My parents said, why don't you look at some men? I said, okay, I'll look at some men. This looks good. That I went to shadi.com, all of that. And I realized this is not for me. There is some kernel inside of you, in the person that you are, that you keep discovering through your life, some irreducible kernel that will not be destroyed, that will not change. And I couldn't. So
So interesting. I will talk about public and private life a little later, but I just want to talk about your family. So here you are saying that, hey, I'm interested in getting married and married to a man. You go through the process of shadi.com and the
yeah.
things that all of us go through. And at what point did you decide that, no, this is not for me? And how did your family react to that? And did you have to come out to them to tell them not marrying a man, but?
So it happened. It didn't happen like in a span of years. I was in Berlin for a little bit, and I said, okay, let me look at men, and I went out on a couple of dates. I it wasn't. I had been with women. I had fallen in love with women, and I just didn't get the same feeling with men. And I tried, and they were really nice men. They were good people. There was nothing wrong. I just didn't feel affirmed as a person. I didn't feel emotionally validated. And this is what I have discovered over time. I'm not one of those people who generalize, make like, say, oh, men are not nice or men are not. That's not for me. Uh, I've that wasn't what the case was. It's just that I forgot men the moment they went out of my sight. And I told this to my mother. I said, well, this is what has happened, but I had not come out to her. I only came out to her around 3 or 4 years later. I kept pushing the coming out. I kept telling myself I don't have to come out to them. I was their only child. It's not like I could have sort of not, I could have gotten away without coming out to them. I came out to them at some point because I had my own place, and I thought, okay, now I'm in a secure place. I never came out to my dad because I didn't need to come out to my dad. He's someone that I just didn't, he just knew, and, he never brought it up. But to my mother, I came out, I said, well, I'm asexual. She said, really? The first time you're also broaching this whole sex talk with one of the parents. So I said, and she said, and then I said, well, you know what? I don't really feel sexual attraction towards men. And she knew what was coming because she did ask me twice as a teenager and as someone in my 20s, do you want to get married to women? And I said, what rubbish? No, of course not. What? I'm not one of those people. So, yeah. And I don't think she's still accepted it, to be honest. She still keeps thinking that, uh, I mean, acceptance is a long process. Coming out is every day, like you say. And, but I knew that I was not going to renege from that place. It was like I had arrived in my truth. And yeah, it
Interesting.
was
Interesting. We have Aruna Desai. I don't know whether you know Aruna Desai. She's the founder of Swikar, the Rainbow
right,
Parent. Here she
right.
is. She's listening to us, and she said very inspiring coming out story. So Aruna Desai, they set up something called Swikar, the Rainbow Parent, and it's a fantastic, fantastic concept where her own son came out to her like 13 odd years ago, and all she said was so what, so. And I love her. I mean, I want every parent to be like that. And so she set up the support group for parents or families who don't understand the whole concept of coming out, who don't
Yeah.
understand that's sexual orientation is normal, or things like that. I mean, Aruna is the best person to talk to, and I will connect you. But we need more Aruna Desais in this world for sure. But coming back to your mom, I really am curious about this, because you said you had a conversation about taboo subject like sexual, asexual. You said you had to come out and say, you talk about these are very difficult topics or subjects even in today's time. Even here in London, I speak to my children because I come from a different way of thinking, but it is a very difficult subject to have. So did your mother understand when you even said the word asexual? Did she understand what
No,
homosexuality was?
no, she didn't. She didn't. These are not words that even exist in the queer vocabulary. Like asexuality is one of the most marginalized
Right.
forms of being sexually, different. So she didn't understand. I explained it to her, and she thought it's some hormonal something, or it's I'm not really feeling physically well or something like that. So no, she didn't get it. She didn't get it. And I just actually wanted to broach the whole topic of I lied. I'm not really proud about the way I came out, but I was scared, and I had my own place finally. And I thought I was going out with someone at that point of time, who my mother kept insisting on calling my friend or my sister, or she said, she's older to you. Why don't you call her that? I think she knew she was also pushing me to come
Agree.
out. Yeah, she was doing it deliberately because it was really pinching me at that point. And I said, enough is enough.
Yeah.
I'm 32 years old. This is my life. I don't need to hide. And I think I had a very emotional coming out also. She also only child. She said all sorts of things. And I said, you're the last person to know in some senses. The whole world knows. And why is it that as your only child, I feel like you should be the last person to know? Like, why do I feel like I need to hide from you? And yeah, we still have these conversations. But it's been like 3-4 years now that I came out. So
Sure, these are things that we have been through. A lot of, like, you're going through, I've been through. I know a lot of our friends have been through this and are still going through this. Times have changed, but they haven't really changed as well. Each family is different. I like the fact that you said that you found a secure place. Like, once you had
yeah,
a secure place, and that's what I say. Every one of us needs to feel safe. That's one thing that we
yeah.
need to feel. We need to feel
I've
safe.
I've been talking about it in other spaces. I think like the only political one of the political issues that I want to put my weight behind is safe spaces for queer people in the
Yes,
city. Where do people go?
exactly.
Like I think Delhi I mean would be it would be great to have a queer center in Delhi where you go, you have a safe space for trans people. And honestly, even though my parents are amazing, I've heard stories of parents, really horrid stories. So I didn't have to go through that. But even then, I knew uh, even though I had a very, very supportive and amazing family, I knew that there was something very toxic about the Indian family and the way it controls,
Yeah.
and that I feared, maybe it I don't know if it was true or not, but I feared that if I didn't have a strong place from which to come out, it would be more of a struggle than I wanted it to be. It still is, but I knew I if people ask me for advice, I tell them that come out from a place where you feel safe, where you feel secure, and that's important. I know it's not always in our control. Some people are outed by other people, some, you know,
Yeah.
but ideally that's what I would do. And that's such a pity because, you shouldn't have to strategize so much about something
Exactly.
that's your truth.
It disturbs me actually when I have
Yeah.
such conversations. I have many such conversations with people. It disturbs me that we have to actually go through this entire trauma. It's an
Yeah.
internal trauma, and that's what I want to ask you next, Debolina. Is I'm sure this would have had some impact on your mental, emotional health, because these things that you're keeping within yourself, there are, I mean, in a closet, it's suffocating. I mean, I always say closets
Absolutely.
are for clothes, not to hide your truth. And so it's suffocating. So what happened to you? Did you go through stuff, and how are you dealing with
Absolutely.
it?
Absolutely. I was, as a young queer person in a small town, 13-year-old, I self-harmed myself. Many different kinds, habits of self-harm. And really from there to this day, like if I look at the arc of my own internal journey, not from the outside, it's huge. It's a lot of suffering, lot of hard work, lot of floundering about. Um, I feel like it taught me a lot of empathy and compassion because I mean I definitely internalized a lot of toxic traits. I looked for toxic traits in other people, and honestly, till a few years back, till like 2 or 3 years back, till I went to a therapist, I and because I'm also trained in analyzing narratives because I teach literature, self-reflection. I feel like I can unpack a lot of these toxic traits, and but it's not been easy. You're there are so many traumatic incidents, parts of you, uh, all like packed in and really not finding catharsis or release. And it takes a huge toll on your mental health. You don't realize. And I was, for a very, very long time, masculine identifying. So, I was really, really shielding a lot of the softness in me through very, very, sort of indifference, pride, and I don't care, and really a lot of suffering, more than I care to unpack actually.
I want to say this to the audience, Debolina. I think it's very important at this stage to say you're smiling throughout. And, if someone saw you, nobody would even see the pain, the trauma that you've been through behind the suffering,
Yeah,
that the word you use. I've been through a lot. I have just started 1.5 years ago talking about aspects of it. Nobody can unpack the entire thing that
yeah,
you feel, or, the abuse you go through, the impact of even hiding. It's
yeah,
huge. Imagine you keep storing something within a little box or a bottle, and it has to come out. But if it doesn't come out for years, imagine the toxicity it can develop into. And to me, all of us smiling here, all of us watching, the audience, please reach out. If anybody's, first of all, don't out people, please. That's
yeah,
something that I repeatedly request people. Go and tell people that Raga is gay. I will tell them if I want to tell them. Okay?
yeah.
That's very important. And,
It's not a secret. It's not a dirty secret we are hiding.
yeah, yeah,
Like I say, heterosexuals have the public and private. Why should we have public, private, and secret? It's not a
yeah,
secret.
yeah,
Please don't
exactly.
out us.
Don't out us. We will out ourselves if we want to, and when we want to, and how we want to. That's most important to remember. And also, if somebody comes out to you, please speak kind. In the words Debolina used, speak kind, have empathy, be considerate. It is very simple. You don't have to do anything more than that. hold somebody's hand. You don't have to give advice. There's no need to. Make
Yeah.
that person feel safe, because those are things that I did not have in my life. And that's one of the reasons, Debolina, we have these conversations, because they're so simple things. People say, I am the kindest person in this world. Then show your kindness when it is required, when it is
Yeah.
needed, right?
Yeah.
I want to come to this point. I want to ask about this whole public, private, and secret.
Yeah.
Do we live these three lives, you think?
Yeah,
Did you?
I think I'll tell you even something so small. And when I was doing this, I was telling myself I'm going to tell this to Raga at some point, because I think you tagged me in that story, and for this event, and it was a public, and I thought, should I allow it on my timeline or not? My aunt's there, and then I was like, I'm just tired. I don't care. It's just every day these small strategies, these microaggressions, all the time having to decide and strategize. And after a point, you're like, what? You're spending so much emotional labor, really strategizing around these little things. For what? For acceptance? No, it's not worth it after a point with that begging bowl of validation and acceptance. I'm past that point. So for a long time, I remember a friend of mine, when I said I would get married, a friend of mine told me, said, oh, are you going to tell your husband? So, and then I thought, are you going to tell your husband about all your boyfriends that you've had before? Like, you know I was just so offended by that question. Maybe that question was innocent, but every time people would sit there and talk about their romantic life, I couldn't talk about it. You know, I just had to sit there feeling something less, or feeling that my sexual life was not valid, my romantic life was not valid, I was not romantically valid. All of that. It's the life of secrecy. It's what keeps you from shouting out from like rooftops. If you're in love, you want to declare it. You want to show off. You're proud. It's the opposite of pride. Actually, it's what we march for. Pride is that sense of self-esteem that you develop, over time. That sense of validation, that sense of affirming behavior that happens over time with confidence, with practice, with community, that keeps affirming it. But the public is also, I think, for me it was easier because I went to a liberal arts place to study and work. So there, the environment was more accepting. But even then, I think there are some parts of being queer, like you're single probably, and by the time you're 35 and your colleagues are 35, they have families, heteronormative, that are understood more than what your life is. So I think there are things that you see about identity and being queer and being um, very out and open, and then there are things that you can't explain even to yourself sometimes. And at the same time, if you're always strategizing, it's like a cocktail of emotions. You really at some point need to let go and really look inward and say that, you know what, who do I come out for? Why do I need to come out? Why am I always strategizing? What am I going to gain out of it? And yeah.
It's interesting, because I did that for 50 years, right?
Yeah.
I felt so suffocated, so suffocated. And I always tell people it's like wearing an ill-fitting jacket. And it's a good-looking jacket, but it's ill-fitting. And you feel the buttons are going to pop off any moment. And it's so suffocating. And people, even now, they say to me, why did you just not retire? You have a happy family, you have wonderful children, they accept you. Why do you need validation from the world? But
Right.
no, it's not about validation only. It also, when you want to feel liberated. Like you said, I want to sit in a room and I want someone to come in and treat my partner as I
Yeah.
treat their partner.
Absolutely.
I want to be included. The
Yeah.
problem is that we don't feel included. Like you said, you would sit in a social gathering and you had to be quiet. You couldn't talk about your romantic relationship because you felt that you'd be judged, right?
Yeah.
Or I don't know, maybe ridiculed. I don't know, or maybe
Yeah,
nothing.
it was
Oh,
just not valid. Like I
yeah,
remember back in 2000, early 2000, just queer sex was not sex. It was just something, it was like an excuse for sex. Or it was something, not, it's something like sex, but it wasn't sex, right? Or it wasn't pleasure. What do you know? Like,
yeah.
really, I've been through those times and through those decades. And I'm so glad to be in 2021, really talking to you about it, because it's all now become a story. And I'm glad. I'm glad it's a
It's
story
it's
now.
it's interesting. You're saying you're talking about 2008. Well, I'm going to tell you about 2020.
Oh my
Nicola,
God.
Nicola and I were out. People knew who we were. We had some very close friends talking to me. I'm supposed to be this charming person. I don't know why, just because I smile at everybody. And this person in front of my partner, who's by then out, says, "Oh, Raga, but see, look at her. She's so pretty. I'm sure you would like her." Or this guy, "Oh my God, he's so handsome. You must go out with him." Like just constant, and it was constant. It
Yeah.
was like my partnership
Yeah.
with my same gender partner
Yeah.
was not valid, did not
Yeah.
exist for them. It was just another woman.
Yeah.
And so I don't understand. 14
Yeah.
years is not a
No.
joke, right? And you have to
Yeah,
say,
you'll get another, like if you're going through a breakup, like married people go through divorce. Yours is just a breakup, Your breakup is just a breakup, and oh, you'll get over it. There's many fish in the sea, or things like that that make you feel like there are so many microaggressions and invalidating comments, insensitive, dismissive, that really take a toll on you after a point. You're like, where do you begin?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You're tired of explaining after a point.
I totally understand fatigue set in. So at 50, I should have retired and I should be sitting and sipping a glass of wine or two or 10 every night. But I decided, no, it's not, that's not going to be. At
No.
50, I want to be liberated. And I want people like Debolina to come out and talk about their stories, because this is a generation that actually is going to turn the page. But look at Debolina's story. Although her story is not, she says, of courage, but yet it is a story of courage, because it is difficult what you've been through
It
or
is.
going
It
through.
is
It's
difficult.
not an
I
easy
mean, it
thing.
is definitely not. I mean, it is. I say it's not of courage in the sense, but I was, out at 12 in my school, which was an all-girls convent. It was run by nuns. I remember at one point in the class, I was sitting in a class and doodling the name of somebody that I had a crush on. On the last page, the math teacher came in, took the copy, and the point was not that I was sitting in a math class and doodling, somebody's name. The point was that it was a woman's name, and he shamed me in front of the entire class. And I felt this sense of defiance. I felt this knot forming in my throat. And so many times I've had to write the name of a person I love and scratch it out, for fear of being discovered. I think it's something so small, but these victories, it's these things that make the coming out story so liberating. The fact that I don't have to hide the name of the person I love. I don't need to scratch out that name.
Fantastic. I'm going to come back to this and your story from Berlin versus India and the message you have carried from there. But let me just read out some of the fantastic, beautiful messages that are coming through. Rachna Chakrabarti, who's been watching our show, says, "Thanks, Raga, for giving the platform to feel liberated." Very welcome, Rachna. Veronica Jacob, this is an amazing initiative from your end. I'm sure it will help a lot of youngsters to own up to their innermost hidden feelings. I hope so, Ronica. I hope so. I mean, this is our biggest challenge, isn't it, today? Is to do we even own up to our own innermost feelings? Aruna says, amazing journey. Debolina, Rachna again says, talks about feeling liberated. So thanks. Keep Anamita Goswami says, awesome. Kanas Jaswabala, a very dear friend of mine from Mumbai, says, Raga rocks. Thank you. Proud of you. Okay, that's right. CVMD, caring, versatile moms and daughters. Time has changed, but not the mentality. It's high time that we change our mentality. I agree, but this is how we change the mentalities. Why do we push anything away? Because we don't understand it fully. The idea is to, through storytelling, tell people how our life is. And so if you find anyone else being feeling challenged or difficulties in their life, please just hold their hand. That's all I say. You don't have to be, too political about it. Now, coming back to your Berlin days, do you see a difference on how queer people express themselves in Berlin versus India? And do you think that that experience in Berlin has helped you, fight for our own rights? I don't know, fight is the word, or
I
bring
think
that to India?
I was in Berlin only for like 16 months, so I wasn't there for a very long time. But Berlin was really, really a very important turning point in my journey, in my own journey, in my personal journey. I think also because I've always felt really like the kind of self presentation that I have, the kind of gender presentation that I have, I always feel like I'm noticed, or I've had to change my appearance according to places. In Europe, I really felt invisible, like, and that was a very liberating feeling. I didn't feel like I needed to be anyway or look anyway. And I remember going to Pride there mid-June and really seeing this big poster saying that um, like it is not a democracy if your sexuality is not liberated. So, I mean, Berlin was also for me the only time I stayed completely alone. I didn't have a partner there. I lived alone, and it was a sort of hermetic solitude. And for me, it helped me go inwards. And yes, there is a lot of difference. I remember going to a gay bar for the first time and really like dancing all night, and it's really the feeling of liberation that there is. If I had stayed longer, maybe I would have found out. I'm not saying that India doesn't have these spaces, but I was also at a point in my journey where I didn't know that community existed in Delhi. I had not interacted with community. So for me, attending Pride twice in Berlin, really seeing the culture there, which is so open, was for me to feel invisible felt like being visible, like being valid in some senses. I mean, in India before, I just felt I was just so, I stood out like a sore thumb. And um, I was very uneasy about my own gender presentation. I was also at a point in time where I didn't call myself androgynous. And suddenly, Berlin was that place where I felt like I didn't need to choose between genders. And at that point in 2013, the word non binary was not available to me. So I said, androgynous for the longest time, that I don't need to choose between either being masculine or feminine. And that was really the fact that there was nobody watching and I could be in my own space, do my research, and really experiment with my gender really, really helped. It
So do you,
was really validating.
excellent. So do you think that the person you have become, the person you are now, from all the experiences you've had, are you now the voice, one of the voices in the community? Do you see the narrative changing?
I think there are many communities. Firstly, in Delhi, there's the trans voice, there are trans men, there are trans feminine groups, and that's the beauty of it. Um, I tell my story because I hope that if there's somebody in a small town listening, they know that communities in big towns are not just about big town people. There are people who are different. There are people who come from small towns. If I'm one of the voices, I think, I mean, I don't know. There are so many voices. I would like to think, yes, I'm one of the voices, many voices that speak. Yeah, I think so.
Do you really believe that things are changing in India, though?
I think, yeah, I think for certain. So this time, what really happened was another landmark was in my queer journey was this time Siliguri had its second or third Pride event, and they called me as one of the guests, and uh, it was really, really validating for me to sit on a panel with my childhood best friend's older sister and talk about queerness in Bangla in Siliguri. So yes, things are changing. It's not going to happen at the same time. It's still happening and these circles are still calling themselves progressive. So yes, it is happening, and I'm so glad that it is happening back in the town that I grew up in, because I always um, used to think that I can't go back in Siliguri and live a valid queer life. But who knows, maybe 10, 15 years down the line, it is possible, you know.
Fantastic, isn't it? That's something that we would all love to do. Hey, Nicola has a question. She says, does there need to be more political changes in India towards the queer?
Um, I think all of it is political, firstly. I think the personal is political. What we're doing on an everyday level is political. If you're asking me about laws, yes, we've only had one law about decriminalization, 377. We need more laws that are progressive around trans rights. About the marriage bill, I think I support those who want marriage and marriage equality. There should definitely be equality. If two men and two women want to get married, why deny them that right? For sure. Uh, yeah, I totally think that we are very, very far away, and this entire jubilation um, about 377 going is just the beginning of it, and we should take the moment and introduce, I think, more and more representation. I think diversity is not something we see officially. I mean, before I talk about politics, let's look at the university. Let's look at the place I work, right? Do we have diversity policy in terms of recruitment? We don't. Do we have reservation for trans people? We don't. How do we implement these things? This is a long journey, and I think it is political in the student body to have representation, to have diversity. It's really important in the way that I see a lot of European places doing, like have diversity policies.
Sure, sure. I'm going to read a comment that Aruna Desai wrote. And audience watching, please feel free to ask us questions because we are coming to the closing of our session. Aruna Desai says, through storytelling, queer children gain their confidence back. So true. They can face the world courageously. And Aruna, of course, is speaking through her own experience and thanking us for this conversation. You're very welcome. And we want to see more and more participation from the audience in the future because, Debolina and I can have a conversation offline and speak for hours. This conversation is for the others as well, so that we can together change the narrative. Debolina, I want to ask you this very important question, which I ask myself every day. Do you feel free within? And what
No,
does freedom mean to you?
no, I don't know what it means, honestly. It's a very deep question, but it did occur to me while I was talking to you at some point. I don't know at which point. I thought I don't completely feel free, but as in, I still have to think of those minor things, like this is a public post and it has tagged me. Should I allow it on my tag? It's such a small thing, isn't it? But I still have to make those choices. I can't sit in the same way in my WhatsApp family group and talk about my love life. I mean, I remember telling this to a cousin once. I said, "Why do you think the women in this group have never felt okay talking about their love lives and their multiple lovers? You think you're the only people who have had multiple lovers and you're showing it off? Well, you know, where am I telling my stories? I'm telling my stories to you. I'm telling my stories in the community. I'm telling my stories at LGBT events, But am I telling these stories to somebody else's in the same way that my grandmother can tell her love story? No. So I think, I mean, I'm not saying that just because I can tell these stories that I'll be more free, but at least in my mind, I will not have to make that choice that I'm strategizing. So that is something, I mean, I still self censor myself, there's a lot of self censoring that happens all the time when you're queer. Um, I mean, it's just, it's amazing how much little um, these choices, how they accumulate and they become oppressive at some points. And even for me, who's so outspoken and who does speak about it a lot, but it is, I'm not as free to talk about it. Like there's always a chance that what I talk about is identity politics, but while somebody who's heterosexual, that's life, right? That's their
Exactly.
life. But mine is identity politics or sexuality. All these labels, they don't as long as these labels are there, I don't think we're free. I mean, I'm not saying that we don't need labels. I think labels are amazing initially, but how long, you know?
Yeah. No, I understand. I hear you fully. It's just like even when I'm talking to you and I'm reflecting on what you're saying, right? And it didn't occur to me not to tag you. And I'm
Yeah, yeah,
thinking, no,
absolutely.
I should have, typically, Nicola and I would take permission from people, right? If we were doing something different. But in this case, we were doing a coming out story with somebody who's already on every
Coming
platform
up.
that we could see have
Yeah.
come out. And that even
Look,
for you to have
yeah,
to censor that and to strategize whether it's right or wrong, I'm thinking, wow, to
yeah,
me, this says it all,
yeah.
isn't it?
How
Isn't it?
many times you have to come out? I while doing it, I actually thought about it. And on Instagram, again, I was like, do I want this person? No, on Facebook, I was like, okay, there are those aunts. And then I thought, you know what? I also thought, let me give them a chance. Let me give them a chance to, just see it on my wall. I don't need to hide anymore. And this is one more coming out about a coming out story. So, what
It's
better place?
I want the audience to listen to this, and this is our life. Imagine every day, sometimes every minute, and at times every moment, we have to
Yeah,
keep this censorship board in our head.
yeah, yeah.
It's not a pleasant way to live. It's not
No.
the way that it's like bondage, right? I
I
have a
think
poem.
that
Sorry, I
is
have
what
a,
makes queer self discovery such a joy and so much suffering, because when you're constantly used to self censoring since a child, and then discovering these epiphanic moments, you're like, oh wait, this is what I like. Oh wait, I don't like this. Oh wait, this is something I never wanted. It's the arc of self discovery is what is so fascinating about being queer. It's after a point, even though people keep on talking about sexuality, yes, okay, but it's these other things that keep opening. Like while there are some doors with age that keep closing, you can't turn back. There are these other doors that keep opening.
like,
So yeah.
quotable quote. Karuna Chima says, we need more queer stories. I'm sure this will bring positive and supportive outlook in the society. Thank you, Ragan Debolina. Karuna, I really hope so. That is the whole idea. And all of us together, every person here makes a huge difference. And it's such a lovely conversation I've had with you, Debolina, really. And I have learned so much today as well. I hope the audience here will take the insights, the stories from your home, and make sure that they are part of that deleting that log kya kahenge, like you keep saying, logon ko kuch bhi kehne do. If I was in a good mood, I would have sung for you, but I am not in a good mood. I'm in a super mood, so I'm going to not sing. But Debolina, lovely,
Oh,
lovely. नहीं कुछ तो लोग कहेंगे. चलो गाओ साथ में. But है ना, you must be trained as most people are from
oh
Northeast, no?
no, I am this is a different coming out. This is something I would rather keep in the bathroom, if not the closet.
I will repeat that. Closets are for clothes, not to hide
Yes,
the truth. Okay.
yes.
But lovely, lovely having you. I
Thank
love
you,
the way
Rana.
you expressed yourself. I think it is very important. You showed your vulnerability to us, and thank you for that, because that requires courage. And this
Thank you.
platform is for people to come in, Just ask us any kind of questions. Nothing is wrong or right. We will take your questions. We want you to be part of the word allyship. Come and join us. Let's celebrate being who we are. Let's be free. I want to feel free. I really, that's the question I ask
Yeah.
myself every night. Do I feel free? No. Because
Yeah.
I may feel free for myself, but I don't feel free for a community.
Sorry, my
That's
phone
that's
is.
the alarm saying, Raga ko itna hi time dena. Okay.
No, no, this was lovely. This was
No,
really
but
good.
thank you for an interesting
Thank
first
you so
edition
much.
of Coming Out Stories from India. Thank you. Really, I cannot tell you this is one of the most interesting and fascinating conversations. It made me
Thank you.
smile, but it also left me a bit disturbed. That
Yeah.
behind the smile, behind the intelligence, and behind all that demo, there is this person who has been going through so much. And I wish you the best. And I know that
Thank
your
you,
life
Raga.
is going to be beautiful and free. And
Yes.
Nicola, thank you for your support in the background. And I know
Thank
you're
you,
putting it all
Nicola
together.
and Raga, for having me. This is a great platform. I hope you have many more stories, diverse stories, and a lot of participation so that maybe 5, 6, 10 years down the line, we don't need to have coming out stories at all. Don't need to come out.
Fantastic. Audience, please share this video with freely with people. If anybody has a story, or if you know of anyone with a similar story or a different story of coming out, please write into us. Thank you for joining in. Please remember to follow me on Totally Out Now on Facebook, Instagram for such stories. There's a YouTube channel also called Totally Out Now. You may want to subscribe. There are lots of interesting stories out there from celebrities, motivational speakers, and people like Debolina and me. And I want to say this again. Remember, closets are for clothes only, not to hide your truth. Signing out at Totally Out Now. Thank you, Debolina.
Bye.